Hello, Mind Bloomers. This is Mind Bloom, the safe space at the intersection of mental health advocacy and breast cancer awareness. Mind Bloom is your podcast. Subscribe to hear more on female entrepreneurship and the juggling of family life, career goals, and romantic relationships. Not an easy task, especially if your physical and mental health need a big hug right now. Hello, Mind Bloomers. This is Marina Gee, your host, and welcome to Mind Bloom, the podcast for all things mental health and breast cancer awareness. Before we dive into this week's episode, let me just say that Mind Bloom, the podcast, and the content at Mind Bloom U across all platforms is not intended to be a substitute for medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. You should always contact your providers for medical counsel. Never disregard any medical treatment or delay seeking professional help because of any content authored or distributed by Mind Bloom. Hi guys, welcome to a new episode of Mind Bloom. This is episode 26, and I'm so excited to be speaking with you today. It's a gorgeous, glorious day here in New York City, and it's a spectacular day for the United States, and I'm sure the 74 million US voters who gave their trust and confidence to Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. This week is the beginning of a new era, I'm hoping, in the US and around the world. An era of decency, of humility, of trust, and sincerity. This victory, this blue victory, means so much for democracy and hopefully immigration, healthcare, foreign policy, and for dealing with the pandemic and with the uncertainty that floats around it. Do we wear masks? Do we not? Do we stay 6 feet apart? Do we not? I am aware that we can all agree that social distancing measures are working, and we are seeing the effects of that, especially here in New York State. But in my perspective, it needs to be generalized. It needs to be mandated almost. I don't know if that is the word, but it needs to be inculcated in people's minds and in people's behavior that staying apart and protecting, covering their faces are the two most important steps at this point. A task force on the matter is already being created, so I am very hopeful that the American electorate picked the right guy and the right girl. By all means, though, this was not an easy victory. This was not an easy 72 hours of indecision and vote counting and revisiting 2016. What a week for mental health. Or to quote from one of my all-time favorite movies, Airplane, I guess I picked the wrong week to quit amphetamines. What a dreadful 3 days these were. I am pretty sure I must have watched more CNN on these 3 days than in my entire life. And I kept going back and forth to the electoral maps, the Google map, the New York Times map, the AP map, NBC. It was crazy. It was the closest to mental health calamity and anxiety disaster that I've been in a long time, since the beginning of the pandemic. I want to say. But I knew I would survive. I knew this too would pass. I was hopeful. And I think the most important, I was embracing the fear and the anxiety and the apprehension. Why not? They tell us to feel all the feelings, right? So this should not be applied only when we're feeling happy or joyous or confident. Now, if we want to be strict in applying the self-help and self-love and mindfulness approaches, then they have to be in place in the good times and in the bad times. Thank God it's not, but if this was a moment of grief, we would allow ourselves to grieve. Or if this was a moment for sorrow, for regret, for confusion, I think here at Mind Bloom, we would do just that. We would feel just that. So that's how I personally dealt with the three and a half almost days of apprehension and wait as the country held its breath literally to learn the results of the presidential election. In a nutshell, I felt it all, but I was aware that I was feeling those not so good feelings and emotions. And I was also aware, or I tried as much as I could, I was also being aware that maybe it was just my mind playing tricks on me when it brought me back to the past, to 4 years ago, when Hillary was not able to break the glass ceiling. So I saw those thoughts come to me, but I would just brush them off gently. Not easy. My brain was racing. It wasn't one of these negative thoughts a minute. No, it was, every 5 seconds, maybe less than that. And you're constantly trying to stay mindful, stay aware, stay in the present, look at the data, look at the new incoming numbers and votes, agree that it makes sense that the votes by mail would lean Democrat and that therefore it was only a matter of time. So that's what I did, and it worked out in my own way. It wasn't perfect, but I knew it was going to be some crazy 3 days, 1 week, 2 weeks, a month. We didn't know. So all we had to do was try our best. When the numbers started skewing towards a victory, first in Michigan, Wisconsin, and then Arizona, Nevada, and then particularly in the cases of Pennsylvania and Georgia, I thought that I was witnessing a modern-day miracle, a godly miracle. I'm just going to say it as it is, in my mind and my heart at least. I said to myself, sear this memory into your brain, take a mental picture of what's happening right now, because this is a miracle. The fact that red states are flipping or seem to be flipping and turning blue like Arizona and Georgia, and the fact that the numbers are coming so close, but we can see in the trends an advantage, a looming advantage for Joe Biden. The fact that this was happening, I was just trying to take it all in. And as they say, enjoy the process, enjoy the ride. Seize it, take it, accept it, ultimately. It's true, it could change. It's true, it could just be an illusion of statistics and the trends. But right now, in the present, the votes are giving an edge to the Joe Biden's campaign. And I could see all of this unfold in front of me on TV, and this script was playing in my heart. Seize this, take this, because this is a modern day miracle that you will probably only witness once in your lifetime. Also because no one wants this much stress in your life. And before you turn off your podcast app or you never come back to Mind Bloom because you're hearing me talk about God, let me just explain what I mean by modern day godly miracle. No, I'm not evangelizing. No, I'm not preaching. I'm just trying to make a point here. So stay with me. I understand that God upstairs is not flipping these states like they're pancakes or is changing the ballots as they come in to make them lean in one direction or the other to please this group or the other. But for me, the miracle is rather the fact that in 2020, one of the worst years of all our lives, we can see so many people come together, leave their houses, and stand in line, either voting early or on the day of, or making the time to enroll in voting by mail. Because it's a process. You have to enroll, you have to be accepted, I believe. You have to wait for your ballot in the mail. You have to return your ballot. And then, if you so wish, you can check the status of your ballot and make sure it's valid. So this is a lot of time. And the conscious intention to do it and to make sure that your ballot got to where it needed to be by the deadline. And most importantly, in terms of miracle, what more evidence of grace and hope in the humankind and faith in a better future do you need than having 74 million people choosing decency and common sense, if nothing else, and integrity, and ultimately equality, diversity, and equanimity? So that's my miracle for you guys. That's what I mean by miracle, and that's exactly what I think happened last week. We needed a miracle to do away with arrogance and madness, and we got it. It doesn't matter how we asked for it, if we were on our knees, or if we were in the lotus position, or if we were Zooming with our friends and relatives, or if we were journaling. It doesn't matter how we were asking for this miracle. The truth, in my perspective, is that it was granted. Our wishes came to fruition. Our ask has been answered. Our shadows and our doubts have been put aside. And seeing everyone come together without an invite, without notice, without partisan requests, but just by sheer free will and intention to see people come together, like I was saying, within 30 minutes of officially calling the state of Pennsylvania, to see people gathering in droves in the central areas of Brooklyn and Manhattan and, of course, Philadelphia, Phoenix, Las Vegas, Washington, D.C., seeing these people come out and celebrate and sing and raise their arms in ecstasy was, I have to say, one of the most beautiful moments of my life. And I'm so happy, so proud to say that I saw it in person. I walked down the stairs of my building, I walked outside, and there it was. The future of the United States, not of anxiety anymore, but of exhilaration and vitality, excitement, euphoria. I'll never forget this moment. And maybe neither will you. Let me know your thoughts on this. You know you can find me on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and Pinterest at mindbloomu. You can send me an email to info@mindbloomu.com. You can check out the website mindbloomu.com. You can go visit and subscribe and like and comment the Mind Bloom YouTube channel. Just look up Mind Bloom and it should pop up. And if you're feeling super happy, generous, excited, you can go on buymeacoffee/mindbloomu and buy me a coffee. It's only $3, and you can help this struggling artist, this striving podcaster, to get a cup of coffee, to keep her going, to keep her happy, to keep her, that is me, podcasting in a nutshell. My guest this week is Taylor James, and I am particularly excited to have him on. He is my good friend from the UK. Of course, nobody's perfect, and we share a love for podcasts. We're both podcasters. You please need to check out Taylor's podcast. It's called the Waffle Shop podcast, and it's exclusively on mental health. So it's an incredible show, especially if you're a fan of how we treat mental health on Mind Bloom. Taylor has a very intimate and personal history with mental illness. He'll tell you more about all of this. And he'll also let you know how he overcame his depression and a sense of loss, confusion, uncertainty, and pressure. So much pressure. The pressure to show up, the pressure to be the best, the pressure to take care of things and others, the pressure to look and seem all right and sound all right and sound fine. This is, of course, particularly important when we're talking about men's mental health. And that's exactly what we'll do in the month of November here at Mind Bloom. We're putting aside, just for a brief moment, stories of breast cancer, and we're focusing in particular on male mental health. So stick around this month of November. If you want to know more, I can guarantee you that it's as hard for them as it is for women. And I'm just going to create a hashtag here. Men crumble too, and that's okay. But please know that you can seek help, that you can find help, that you can go to others with your problems, that you can have, in fact, problems. So all of this and more coming right up after this. Guys, if you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Turns out it's free. There's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or your computer. It will also distribute your podcast for you so that everyone can listen to it on Spotify and Apple Podcast and many, many more. And guess what? You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. So go download the free Anchor app or go to Anchor FM to get started.
I need to go. My face is like aching already.
From laughing?
I'm laughing.
Well, we'll make this very serious then. There's
Yeah.
no. This is all about...
I'll go to my sad place.
Remember, Brexit, Donald Trump. That's how... It doesn't
It's
work
not
with you. Well, we'll just start with laughing and muscle aching from laughing. Taylor, it's such a pleasure to have you. I welcome you to Mind Bloom. I'm so thrilled to have you.
No, it's an absolute pleasure. I'm a fan, so to have this chance, I'm very grateful.
I am a fan of your Waffle Shop too, and I'm in the kitchen making my little something for dinner, and I'm listening to you speaking with your guests. Yeah, big fan. And then we reach out almost on a daily basis. We decided we were going to be, accountability buddies in terms of sugar intake, which is one of our weaknesses.
Oh, huge weakness. I'm awful for it.
You're worse than I am.
Yeah, 110%. I'm not even offended by that.
No, I
know
well,
for a fact
my only flaw is I eat peanut butter from the jar in spoonfuls. But hey, what's that?
Yeah, I think that's a little bit nutritious, isn't it? It's good. You get your fiber in there.
In that. Yeah, fiber and protein. Yeah, I'm okay.
Mine's more like brownies and cake and crisps.
Yes,
more so crisps.
It's anything. I made brownies last night because I figured if I make them, with brown sugar, and I used rice flour because it's got no gluten in it. I figured, I know. And they turned out very, very good. And so I try.
I think, do you know what I find weird? And I don't know what just made me think of that. When you make the food yourself, you're less inclined to eat it because you're like, oh, if you make food when you're hungry, then it's like, oh, it's there in front of you. It's like, oh, I'm not hungry now. Well, it's probably because I've like eaten half of it before it's like made. It's probably, that's probably what it is, rather than.
I think I made the brownies because I wanted to eat the dough.
The mix. Yeah.
The mix. Which I did.
We're quite clearly doing great at this accountability thing. But yeah, awesome. Do it, eat it.
Just go for it. Yeah, we obviously suck at accountability buddies. But regardless, we have an awesome friendship and we're across the pond, as you can probably tell from our accents, even though I'm from that side of the pond too. But so good to have.
Best of both worlds.
It's the best of both worlds. Yes. Maybe one day we'll have you over for a waffle.
Maybe.
So, Taylor, just changing subjects completely. What makes your mind bloom?
Do you know what? Like, I think this kind of conversation and the people I get to talk to, I think make my mind bloom. Just hearing other people's experiences, like their kind of struggles, what they've been through and how they've dealt with those kind of struggles, really kind of puts fire in my belly and being like, oh, well, wow, it makes me feel less weird, if you like. But it's more because I beat myself up a lot over, how I feel and, being like, oh, this is only happening to me. So these kind of conversations and the chance to learn something new and learn, about other people's experiences really makes my mind bloom.
Yeah, and you learn new things and you teach new things too, because as I listen to your episodes, I learn so much. And for me, it's funny because I've shared with others now the idea of that guy from the Big Brother, I think it was, he had the elevator analogy. That was awesome. It's
quite hard hitting as well, because I'm aware of his kind of journey, obviously in the UK with being on like various TV shows and stuff. But he's been in some real dark places, and to hear it kind of put in that way of like, you can get off at the first floor, the second floor, but what you don't want to do is get off at the ground floor, or the basement, because obviously the basement is. You're under, that's it. And I think there's something incredibly powerful, but also quite comical in a sense. As like, you can keep going down, further and further, but you've got the ability to press a different button, to press some, a different floor, and to go back up and get off and live your life that way. So yeah, it's quite hard hitting, but I think it's an incredible way of looking at it.
And I love it because you interview men, you interview women, singers, artists, psychiatrists. The whole gamut, and that's amazing. Yeah, I've when I started Mind Bloom, I vouched that I would only speak with women because I wanted to give a voice to women. It's enough of white. The hegemony of white men. It's enough. But here I am. Talking with the guy.
No, I completely agree with you. And it's something. I was raised by women. Obviously, I'm around them, all the time. I live with my little sister, and but I completely agree. And I think this is why I'm drawn to podcasts like yours, because for me, it makes me feel a little bit safer in a way. Like it feels like home in a way for me. So, I'm incredibly grateful that you're putting episodes out with the incredible women that you've spoken to.
They are incredible.
So yeah, I'm obviously, as much as I'm very much a male, I'm completely on your side.
That's, oh my gosh, we have so much to talk about. So tell us more about the Waffle Shop podcast, which is your podcast. You started it in around what, February, March of this year?
End of February, I think it was born. Yeah, which, to be fair, doesn't seem like a long time, but considering the year that we've had, it feels like a lifetime.
And it feels like a lifetime to me too, because mine started in June and it already feels like a lifetime. I know.
Welcome to the party.
I love it. I don't ever want to stop. It's amazing. I love it. And it's addictive too.
Really addictive.
Right.
It's constant.
It's a lot of work too. Guys, don't do it. Nuh-uh.
Yeah,
it's a lot of work. No, they'll leave it to the professionals. But so I don't remember how we ran into each other on some platform or other. And the Waffle Shop podcast, I stayed with it to this day, and I hope for ever and ever. But you have to explain my American listeners what a waffle is in the UK, because I spent months just thinking, this guy must really like waffle, which is not far from the truth.
It's not far from the truth, but I actually prefer potato waffles, which I don't know if Americans have either.
I don't
potato
think so.
waffles are kind of like a hash brown, but they're in a kind of like, they look a bit like a waffle, but they're made of potato. But obviously they don't look as great as a sweet waffle for the branding. So it's all for marketing purposes.
So you didn't call it the potato waffle?
No, the potato waffle podcast doesn't have the same ring to it. But yeah, obviously in the UK, we have a bit of a saying, like if someone's talking too much or, they're chatting, it's called a waffle, like, they're waffling on, like, they're waffling too much. And yeah, it was something that I've always kind of been called, like, always, he's waffling, like, especially like if I've had a beer or anything, they're like, oh God, he doesn't shop, he's always waffling. But then it was something that really stuck with me. And then the shop part was, a shop for a lot of people is somewhere where you go to get all the, your necessities, the stuff that helps get you through the day. So it kind of just put two and two together, and it became the Waffle Shop.
I love it. See, I learned that if anything, I learned what a waffle is in the UK.
Two types of waffles there. So I'm just here to educate.
The Pastry Chef podcast.
Yes.
No, you guys talk about mental health, obviously, and that's why also we are friends and fans of each other's work. We share tips, we share accountability, we will reach out in moments of self-doubt and second guessing. Yes. And so the Waffle Shop podcast is tremendously important for that. And so please tell us more about that. How did it start? Where did we know that the title, where it came up from, but why a podcast and why in February?
So it was actually born from probably a rock bottom moment for me. So as I mentioned, like I was raised by women, like I live with my younger sister. So, 3 years ago, I was in a situation where my mum was very poorly. Like she had an operation on her back, which went wrong. So basically what had happened was the spinal fluid at the bottom of her spine was leaking. So, she was at home, she was very delirious. She was, she didn't really recognize me or my sister. So we got her to hospital and they're like, oh, okay, we just need to drain the fluids and then she should be okay. So I came home. My sister was actually starting her exams the next day. So came home, got everything ready. And then the day after I was going back up the hospital, but like got my sister off to school to start her exams. But then when I got to the hospital, they were like, we need to make a decision in regards to your mum's brain. And it was from that moment, it was just complete and utter heartbreak. The fluid had travelled up her spine and caused a blockage, which then starved the brain of oxygen, which then, they were saying words like brain dead and, she's not going to make it. The chance of her living are very, very slim. So it's still quite tough for me to talk about those kind of situations because I'm still dealing with it on a daily basis.
Of course.
But then what followed that was, months of being in intensive care and, being by my mum's side just saying, squeeze my hand, to no response. They sat us down and basically had the conversation with us to say, there's nothing more we can do with turning the life support machine off. But at that time, my sister was in the middle of her exams. And I remember being in the corridor and saying to the surgeon who was looking after my mum, saying, like, just please, for my sister's sake, don't do this in the middle of her exams. Just like, give it a few more days. And thankfully, like, he agreed. He was like, okay, I want the date of your sister's last exam, but unfortunately, there is nothing more we can do. So they got to a stage where they turned the machine off and the stubborn cow started breathing by herself. And then it literally, I was like, okay, we've got a chance here. We weren't out of the woods at all, but she was breathing by herself. She then left intensive care and she just went from strength to strength. She's now in a rehabilitation home in like close to where we live, basically learning how to talk, how to use her hands and everything again. So we're incredibly lucky that we still have our mom in some capacity. I mean, she's incredibly stubborn. Well, it's where, me and my sister get it from. But for me, because I went from watching my mom, literally, who was my only parent, my only kind of support network, to be so vulnerable and then to kind of be next of kin, making, all these decisions and having these tough conversations, to then practically becoming a dad to my younger sister and taking that kind of responsibility, taking over a house, which in itself, as is a lot of work. And then to go through to try and keep my career going, which looking back at the time, it was all like, oh, Taylor's handling this really well. He's doing great. He's getting through this, that, and the other. But what was actually happening, I was completely ignoring the fact that I was grieving for someone who wasn't dead.
Yeah.
I hadn't handled the traumatic side of things. And it's a word now that I completely still underestimate, is the trauma of it all. Like even now, like if my phone rings or like I don't know the number, I go back to that place of like something bad's going to happen. And then Christmas of this year, my mum was in hospital again with pneumonia. She was really poorly. And again, we were sat down by a doctor in one of those tiny little rooms and told, this is it. There's nothing more we can do. But then she did it again. She pulled through. And then it got to a stage with me, was like, I couldn't do it anymore. Like it chipped away so much of me and like it took so much out of me that probably it's not selfish because it's, it's something that I look back on now and I'm incredibly proud of, but like, I just didn't want to continue living my life the way it was going. And I was scared, like all the emotions of the past 3 years had hit me at once. And I was ready to give up. I just couldn't give any more. And then I'm incredibly lucky with the support network that I have and with my little sister. And they noticed it. They pulled me up on like a few things and just said like, look, things aren't right. And, I went for a beer with one of my best friends and I just said, I can't do it anymore. and everything just came out. It was just a weight had been lifted because I was having that kind of, I was admitting defeat. And as men, and even some incredibly strong women, it's something that we don't want to do. We don't want to admit defeat, but I had nothing left to give. So that was a turning point. And then I started having therapy sessions, but then COVID happened. So then my therapy sessions had to come to an end. So it was either run the risk of slipping back into that frame of mind and going backwards once, you know, the ball was rolling, I was opening up, or put more pressure on myself and start a podcast. So I started a podcast.
Because why not?
Because why not? That's exactly what I needed, was more pressure and more stress.
No, but it's a lifesaver, I think. I find
100%.
Right.
Completely. Like, and it's so kind of cheesy to say, but I think it has saved my life. It has completely gave me a new lease of life. It's given me a new direction, and the opportunity it's given me is it's made me realize, like, I'm not on my own. Like, I'm not the only one who's going through the struggles, the anxieties, the depression, the PTSD. There is so many different out there from all different walks of life, feeling the same emotions that I'm feeling, like, even like on a daily basis. And that's something that I didn't realize until I reached out. You know, the podcast, you know, it blew up in a way that I wasn't expected. The support came flooding in. And it was almost that kind of realization that I should have done this sooner. But I had to get to that rock bottom point. I had to be at that point for me to want to change. And like, even go back to like the elevator analogy, like I was literally on the ground floor ready to go lower, and I was like, no, you know, it was time to sort things out, I think. So yeah, the Waffle Shop was born, and it's been the best thing that's ever happened to me.
I say the same thing. Yeah, I say the same thing of mine as well. Even today I was texting with a friend and saying it saves my life every single day. Yeah. And it sounds cheesy and corny, but it's true. Yeah, the possibilities
100%.
just expand, and you find a community, you find people, definitely like-minded people. And these are tough topics to talk about, but regardless, it doesn't feel difficult. It feels keen. It feels home. It feels like home. It feels like...
Definitely. And I think that's what's beautiful from it. I mean, I'm a big believer in, you know, beauty being born from like real, like traumatic, like experiences. And we know, whether it's music, whether it's art, or, you know, even like a podcast, if you like, because it gives you a platform. It makes you feel, like you just said, like home. And without these kind of conversations, or those platforms, everyone is isolated. Everyone is, and we're in obviously this real horrible situation that not only one person's facing, the whole world is facing this. And I'm just so grateful to have that experience and getting the chance to learn and meet like-minded people, because there's nothing more beautiful, I don't think, than being able to have these kind of conversations and open up and kind of admit vulnerability.
Mm-hmm.
It's free therapy as well, so
yeah, it is. Vulnerability is the key word, I guess. Yeah, and so many people, especially men, and I do want to talk with you about men's mental health, but especially with men, it's so difficult to even fathom what vulnerability is. So you stopped therapy because of COVID. It didn't happen, not even through video or anything. You weren't able.
No. So in the beginning, I was so lucky to have the therapist that I got, because she was aware of the situation. Like, she worked where my mum currently lives. Yeah. So and she's an incredible woman and like therapist. And yeah, I was so lucky, but because of the lockdown restrictions, and then because her children were like at risk, she had to stop attending obviously my mum's place, which is obviously safety first. But again, as much as like I was really annoyed about not being able to continue, there was something kind of, it was supposed to happen. It was supposed to, she gave me the tools that I needed and the bit of the kick up the bum that I needed to be like, okay, you need to fix this now. Because I think this is, especially with mental health, is, and as much as this might sound quite like hard hitting and like as if I'm pointing the finger, but like, you're not going to get better if you don't want to get better. Like, unless you're putting in the work, it's not easy. Like, those therapy sessions took me down some really hard, difficult paths, and you know, they opened some very difficult doors for me of stuff that I hadn't told anyone, or I hadn't even kind of told myself. So it's not easy, but you are going to have to want to change to get better. It's not easy, but believe me, I mean, my mum's living proof of, you know, the hard work pays off. Because the doctors say it to us all the time, like, if, you know, the fact that we were there every day, like playing music, you know, squeezing her hand, you know, giving her stuff to kind of think about, and like little actions, God knows where she would be. Right. So the hard work does pay off.
Yeah. I discovered yesterday, didn't know this existed. I don't know if you know of this term, the man box. The man box it's interesting. I guess it's probably not super out there, also, which is also telling of the status quo of men's mental health, yeah. Right? I think, and this is just something I discovered yesterday in talking with my brother. He lives in the UK, actually. Hello, Bristol. Hi. But this guy, actually New Yorker, Tony Porter, came up with this term, the man box, which is just short for the socialization of men by their parents and by, well, men, I guess, which makes them involuntarily and unconsciously prone or resistant, actually, to vulnerability, to being empathetic to women's concerns. And this guy was saying, I borrowed his book from the library and I was reading it last night. And he says, you know, it's not that these are not bad people. They're not bad men. They're not abusive. They're not rapists. They're normal, regular people who want to do good. And they're highly concerned about their daughters, their wives, their mothers. But womanhood is not something that they were taught to care about.
Yeah.
Isn't it interesting? And therefore, and so it's all about this men don't cry, men don't show vulnerability, men need to stay strong and bring home the bacon, men just show up and do the things. So he's trying, in the decades of his work, he's been trying to just debunk this and break it down and say, look, guys, it's okay to cry. It's okay to be in the dumps. It's okay to reach out for help, to ask for help.
Definitely.
It's okay to feel anxious and have a therapist and have depression, whatever it is. So
I think it's very important. I think we're definitely moving in the right direction with it all. But I still see it now, like even with my group of friends. I mean, I'm very open now with how I'm feeling, or like if I'm feeling anxious, or if I'm not quite feeling like, you know, the lads are going down the pub and I'm like, I'm not feeling it tonight. Like I'm not in a good place. But I still see my friends struggle. And I think it's now because I've been through it and I know the signs for myself that I see it in them. Yeah. So it's tough because there's still, I mean, I still do it on a daily basis. Like I'm fine. Yeah. It's that type of like, but then you know, whether you're male or female and you hear the words back, I'm fine, you automatically think something's not fine. Like, what have I done wrong? Kind of thing. So, you know, it's definitely moving in the right directions, but there is no shame in it whatsoever. Like, you know, everyone makes the joke about like crying when like Mufasa died in The Lion King. And, you know, it still gets me every time. Like, there is no shame in it whatsoever. Like, it baffled. But then I'm probably very different because I've been raised by women. So it's like, you know, I do wear my heart on my sleeve. But when all this happened with my mum, I had to be the strong one. But no, I'd rephrase that. I didn't have to be the strong one. I put myself in that position of like being the strong one, even though I was probably one of the worst for it, and I was crumbling. But it wasn't until accepting vulnerability and accepting like I am struggling and reaching out for help that things started to change. That there's no shame in it whatsoever.
Yeah. And that's why your podcast is so important, because it really is raising awareness for men's mental health and women alike, because we're human before having a gender assigned to us at birth. But you know, you talk about the shame, but I think some of these people are so conditioned that they don't even, shame is even too much. They don't even get to that point. They just stay at the level of I'm fine. I'm just going to bottle it up, and I don't even know that I'm doing it. But so I almost wish that some men would reach the shame aspect, because at least it would give them something to feel.
It's not healthy. It's honestly, it's not healthy. Like, the bottling things up, like you're going to get to a point where that bottle is going to get full, and the bottle is going to either explode or it's going to pop. And there's something that my cousin works in mental health, and it's something that she said to me quite early days that's really stuck with me, is that whether you deal with this now or you deal with it 5 years later, you are going to deal with it. So why put yourself through 5 years of pain, stress, worry? Like, just let it down, let your guard down, be open, honest. Like, this is what's annoying me. This is what I'm struggling with, because there is always someone there at the end of the phone. There's so many help, like outlets and resources, whether it's online, your doctors, even people, you know, you mentioned earlier on in the show about, you know, these communities being there. Like, my DMs are always open for anyone who is struggling. Like, there is no seriousness about it. I'm not a medical health professional. I'm just speaking from my own experiences. But I can't tell you how much time I feel like I've wasted by not reaching out and talking. So just do it. Just do it.
Tap into what's really going on. Do you, in your social media, do you feel you have a fair amount of male followers?
Definitely. And it's quite, what I'm incredibly grateful for is the fact that now I can class some of those as friends, because we've all connected from like various kind of trauma or various kind of mental challenges, or, you know, whatever it is. And it's now a very tight little community that everyone brings something to the table. You know, there's fitness instructors, there's personal trainers, there's, you know, doctors, there's everyone from all different walks of life now being able to kind of give their little bit of advice. I mean, it's not a one size fits all thing for mental health. There's people out there who, you know, who enjoy meditation, who enjoy yoga, you know, all these different tools, which are great, but they don't work for everyone. So I think it's very important as well to kind of understand that and stick with it. Go out and find what works for you. And this is what I'm so grateful of, my little community, is the fact that people have given me tips. They're like, oh, try this workout. I mean, I don't listen to that person, clearly, but it's nice to hear to his advice. Yeah. But, there's so many different things that I've been talking, like breathing techniques, like, swimming, like it's insane. But it all comes back down to talking and having those kind of conversations about coping mechanisms, about different challenges, because it's just about learning new things. And I think it's only really having those conversations that you are going to move in the right direction.
Mm-mm. What are some tips you have then for when you're feeling down?
Ooh. So for me, music is my biggest coping mechanism. There's something great about making a playlist, and whether, I've been incredibly lucky in the past to be able to go to a lot of gigs, to a lot of festivals, to, on a lot of holidays where, certain songs take me back to like kind of happy times and stuff. Yeah. So that for me is my biggest one. So whack your headphones in, go for a walk, clear your head. It's very therapeutic, and just being out for a walk. Don't give yourself like a time limit. Just go wherever you need to go. So walking, music, podcasts. The Waffle Shop podcast is great. So is Mind Bloom, it's highly recommended there. But yeah, I think just being a little bit active, and not everyone's sociable, but text your friend, see how they are, see if they want to go for a coffee, see if they want to go for a walk with you. And there's something so therapeutic about that for me. But yeah, I think that's my main tips. Mm-hmm. Whack your headphones in, go for a walk.
Yeah, a bike ride, or walk your dog. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, I've taken on baking as well. As long as
I don't need that one.
That's one you're just going to choose to ignore.
I'm going to ignore you completely. Doesn't even make it to the oven.
You just eat the mix.
Exactly.
I worry a little bit about the raw eggs in the mix.
But I've had salmonella 4 times this year. 4 times this week.
I guess that explains it.
It's Wednesday.
Stop it. Note to self, don't invite British guests on your program.
They ruin everything. You should know that by now, that the Brits ruin everything.
Just gonna edit this part out. No, you're amazing. You're wonderful. Too bad you're not European anymore, but
yes, sorry about that. Regardless. I didn't vote that way, so
yeah, I that's what they all say. I didn't vote that way. Same here. But you're trying. You do have NHS. We appreciate you for that.
Thank you. Made that myself. No, I'm incredibly grateful for the NHS. I think, they've given me my mum back, and kind of tried to take her away in the first place, but we won't go into that. But they've given her back, and the incredible, the nurses, doctors, therapists, everyone involved in even looking after my mum now, like the carers and stuff, like they make it easier for me not to worry. Like they're phenomenal at what they do.
I appreciate this time so much. I would stay here, and we probably will stay here for a little longer. But for my editing's sake, we're going to call it a wrap. And I thank you so much, Taylor, for coming on Mind Bloom. It was amazing. We're going to continue waffling. This waffle was
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And that was our episode for this week. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you were able to take away some useful tips and tools to use in your own life. Don't forget to subscribe to Mind Bloom the podcast anywhere you stream your podcasts, and please leave a message on the Anchor FM voicemail if you have any questions or comments for me. Also, please leave a review on the Apple Podcasts app. That would help the podcast reach more people. That would be great. Follow Mind Bloom on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at MindBloomU. and check out my website, mindbloomu.com. Don't forget, a new episode every Tuesday. I look forward to spending time with you again next week. Be well and stay blessed. Bye-bye.